we're going to go ahead and get started. So, good evening, everyone. For those of you that know me, can't hear? How's that? Okay, good evening. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tim Moore, and on behalf of the Waterloo Community Action Committee, we welcome you to this city town hall meeting, and hope everyone will find it valuable. Some of you may be wondering, what is the Waterloo Community Action Committee, or some of you may have known it as the Waterloo CAC. Several months ago, I emailed Dr. Hill and said, what can we do to get the community more involved? After several emails and several meetings, we came up with the Waterloo Community Action Committee, and it's based for our children, our schools, and our community. Our mission is to advocate a high standard of education for our children and promote spirit and pride in our community. We will bring together citizens to help resolve issues in our community, and the key word here is community. The reason for this committee was to get the community involved, parents, students, teachers, etc. Any member of the community who wishes to contribute their efforts is welcome to join the Waterloo Community Action Committee. At this time, I'd like to at least recognize some members of our committee, and so I don't embarrass myself and forget a name. If you're here and you're part of that committee, could you please stand? So here's a few of them. We've been meeting every Wednesday for the past 2.5 months to get ready for the levy. Some of our future goals is to start working more with the school board and try to get our community involved. And this here is one instance of getting the community involved. In response to the situation that occurred in Charlotte last week, we had several requests from a Waterloo parent and some members of our community. Basically, the request was, can we, the Waterloo Community Action Committee, pull together a community meeting to review and hear from the key faculty, staff of the Waterloo local schools on how a situation of this magnitude would be handled in our schools. Could we help explain the procedures, the process, and the calls that we would receive as parents if, heaven forbid, our school was faced with a similar situation? That got me thinking, when I went to school, just a few short years ago, by the way, a safety procedure for us was walking outside for a fire drill. Laying in the middle of the hallway with your hands and knees, with your hands over your head. That was a safety procedure for us. Today, folks, times have changed. We now live in a world with bomb threats, unwanted intruders, hostage situations, guns in schools, suicides, drugs, and bullying. You know, the list goes on and on. The mindset of that won't happen to us or that won't happen here in our school is over. These situations are very real and it can happen anywhere. We took this request to the Waterloo School Administration and they overwhelmingly agreed to put on this committee meeting tonight. We hope that at the conclusion of tonight's meeting, you have a clear understanding of the process and procedures our district's safety procedures. And with that, Superintendent of the Waterloo Schools, Dr. Andy Hill.
Good evening. I want to thank Tim and the other members of the Community Action Committee for spearheading this meeting tonight. I have a few people I want to introduce here before we get started. To put together a meeting like this, it takes a lot of cooperation, and we have a lot of people that are here to add their professional insight. I'd like to start by introducing Sheriff Doak, Major Missimi, Detective Burns. We have our two of our three principals here this evening, Matt Montgomery and Tracy Early. They're here if we have questions specific to our buildings. We have some of our Board of Education members here tonight. I think I saw 3, Ken Fletcher, Diane Wilsey, and Steve Jones are here. I believe our other 2 are out of town today. We have a number of other staff here, and then also, as I saw as people were coming in tonight, we have some trustees from both of our townships, Atwater, Randolph. They can stand up for just a moment. And a number of our safety patrol that are here too. If you guys want to stand up here tonight, you're all part of this discussion with what we're going to be going over. So thank them for joining us here this evening, and obviously we thank you for coming. We're happy with the turnout here tonight, and hopefully you'll find what we have to go over meaningful. Just a quick note, we are streaming this live, so when we get to the question and answer part at the end, we'll probably repeat those so that those at home can hear what's going on. Just to give you an overview here of what's going to happen tonight, what we would like to do, hopefully in about 45 minutes tops, before we get into questions, comments, concerns, is to kind of review, first of all, our incident last Tuesday that happened at the high school. Okay, we actually were working on putting this meeting together before our incident that we communicated with you ever even occurred. It was in result of what happened the day before in Chardon, and we already had these conversations going, and then our incident happened. So we want to go over that quickly. We want to review an overview of our general district safety procedures, what we have in place here. We want to talk a little bit about the drills that students do throughout the year. We want to talk about ALICE, which stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. It's a process that in conjunction with the Portage County Sheriff Department, we will be switching over to for the beginning of next school year for how we respond to certain situations here at the school. So we'll give an overview of that. And then we want to talk about notifying the school and/or the sheriff department for different concerns that you may have. And then at the end, we will take as many questions, comments, or concerns as you have. I personally will stay around here till the last question is done. So it's kind of our agenda for the evening. So to start with then, this incident last Tuesday, and Sheriff Doak happened to be here in our building at that time. I think it's great the sheriff department had decided that they wanted to get out and be in the buildings more. And it just so happened to be on Tuesday morning that he was personally here just walking, doing a walkthrough, just to be a presence when this perceived threat that was written on the bathroom wall was discovered. And what he and Mr. Julio were able to do quickly was to review. They quickly found out from our custodian that we only had about an hour and a half or less time period that we were looking at when it could have been reviewed. So they quickly reviewed the video and were able to isolate this to 4 students who had used the restroom during that time. They were able to get those students, search lockers, make sure there was nothing that could have been used to carry out any kind of threat that was written, and then spent the rest of the time trying to get to the bottom of who was actually responsible for that. Where are we with that? We're still ongoing, investigations ongoing. We were not able to determine which, we actually narrowed the 4 down to 3, that we were not able to determine which of the 3 was actually responsible, but it is an ongoing investigation. And I did want to clarify one thing. When all of this was happening, because they were so quickly able to isolate the 4 students that potentially could have been involved, we made a decision to handle things the way that we did, which was to not go into some mass panic and hysteria here, because we knew who it had to have been was responsible. We had them there. We also, in the communication I put out, and some of you may be in here, when I put out the letter, as soon as we was able to put something out to you with what had occurred, we did not specifically state what the threat was, because it was an ongoing investigation, and we had been asked not to, and a number of you called and asked if we could say what it was, emailed, and then the next morning it was in the paper. So that was some confusion that had occurred, and we understand how things like that happen. They had a very busy day on that day. It was going on. There was other incidents happening. So didn't want anybody to think that we were trying to be elusive with what occurred. We were just following what we had been asked to by the sheriff department, because we did not want to interfere with any kind of investigation that was happening. Sheriff Doug, do you have anything you want to add on this?
The only thing that I have to comment on additionally is the fact that I happened to be here at the time this had happened, and was in touch with our detective bureau, who were unfortunately responding to other schools for similar type threats. There was some miscommunication, and I'll take responsibility for that on our part at the office. I really didn't want that out into the media, but the investigator was talking to the media, and we get a flood of calls on this sort of thing. And he inadvertently made some comments about what was written. I didn't know that was going to be in the paper. And I guess speaking on his behalf, when you get questions like that, oftentimes the media wants to know what's going on. And he did comment on it, and it got into print. I would have preferred it wouldn't have been. We were trying to keep that stuff internal at the time. But that was the glitch in it, and that's how it got out to the media. So I take responsibility for that, and I know that Dr. Hill was trying to keep all of you informed, and really didn't want that message out, but that's what occurred. We had a lot going on that day. The media was talking to one of our detectives and asking what was going on in other situations. And the other thing is they can make public records requests for anything in terms of a closed investigation and get that information. Now, this one was still open, so we probably shouldn't have commented on it. That was not an error on the part of the school. That was our error.
So like I mentioned, this is still ongoing. As with many things in a school setting, probably in many things in life, you know, as days pass, people start to talk. You start to get other things you can follow up on. And so we are still actively looking in to see if we can determine who was responsible for that. But we are very grateful as a school district for Sheriff Doak and the detective that spent the majority of their day here that day with all of the assistance they gave us. And they were back here right again the next day helping us out too. And I should also mention, they've, since that time, they have been a regular presence here, just coming through, checking things out, just being here for us, and we're very grateful for that. We know that times are tight for you guys too, and to be able to provide staff down here like that for us, we're grateful for. So what do we have in place here at Waterloo? We have a number, we have a safety plan manual that all of our employees have, and there's access to this where it goes through all of I didn't hurt any ears at home. That goes through all of our details with how we would respond to different scenarios and different situations. And so as you can see here, we have a wide variety of different plans that are in place for scenarios that we may come across. Bomb threats, explosions, chemical, toxic, and fume spills, crimes against people and property, death or suicide, earthquakes, fires, hostage situations, medical emergencies, communicable diseases, student disturbances, possession of a weapon on school property, runaway or abduction, tornadoes, severe weather, hurricane, and then a utility emergency. So while we have all of these processes in place, we do have certain ones that we'll practice throughout the year. Students regularly, about 9 times a year, we're required to do fire drills over the course of a school year. Tornado drills we're required to do during the tornado season once a month. I think tornado season officially starts in March, if I'm not mistaken. And then the lockdown drill is something that gets practiced here. And I think what we want to do, we have all of these different things, but I think the ones that are probably most relevant to our discussion tonight deal with what do we do if we have an intruder? What do we do if we have somebody that's in our building that has some type of a weapon? And so I want to spend a little bit of time on that without getting into great detail. We practice these plans. We have our things in place. There's phrases and words that are used that people know what they mean, but we also have that balance where we want to make sure that that stuff's not just out there in the open too. So I want to give you a sense of how we go about things while protecting, I guess, the integrity of what it is that we do. But if we were to have a situation where we have an intruder in the building, if we were to have a situation where we have a weapon, what we would currently do is go into an all building lockdown. And there's certain things that happen once that occurs, with where the students go in a classroom, what teachers do in response to going into a lockdown. We have places on our campus where we would evacuate to our stadium. That's our point of evacuation. We've had a lot of discussions about that because we're in the process of revising some things, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But with our location here, there's not a very close or safe other gathering place for us to be able to get everybody to. So our place is over at the stadium. We would ever have one of these situations where we're in lockdown and we have some kind of a crisis, an active crisis that's going on. Obviously, our first responsibility and first concern is going to be to make sure that we have everybody taken care of and that everybody is as safe as we could possibly get it, that we've notified the authorities that need to be notified to be over here to assist. As soon as we're able to get those things done and have those under control and have a good assessment of the situation, our intent would be to communicate with you as parents in the community to let you know what it is that's going on. And we would do that in multiple ways. We would use our Alert Now system. Our Alert Now system, when we send those out, we have 2 different options. One is to just send it as a non-emergency call. The other is to send it as emergency. I don't think, at least during the time that I've been here, there's ever been one that's been sent as an emergency. So when we send it non-emergency, it just goes to the primary contact phone number that we have in our system. If we send it out as an emergency call, it goes to every number that we have for you in our system. So if we were ever in a situation like this, we would send out an emergency call, which would go to home numbers, cell phones, whatever you've provided us, because our information is only as good as what we've been provided. The information that gets turned in on those medical sheets is the information that should be in our student data system, and the student data system is what feeds into that Alert Now program that we use for phone calls. So you could expect us to communicate with you that way. You could expect us to communicate with you if you're on the email list that we do. We have about 350, 400 people that when we send out an email on various things, receive that email. If you don't, I have sign-in sheets over here tonight, and if you want to be on that, just sign in. We'll make sure we get you added there. We also use Facebook and Twitter. We don't use that as well as we probably should. We have a small following because we don't post much, and so that's understandable. Part of that's because right now that access is blocked for our campus, but we're looking into making some potential changes with that so that we can actually use those things real time as we would need to. But we would communicate with you what it is that was occurring with what we were permitted to disclose and what it was that we would need you to do, where we would need you to report. More than likely, where we would want you to go would be over to our stadium. That if we had to evacuate the students from this building, we'd have them over at the stadium, and if we needed you to pick them up, that's where we would be wanting you to meet us to do that. But I think the thing that's important to note here is that every situation is different and unique, and why we can have a plan in place for how we're going to respond to something. Whatever that situation is may put us in a situation where we can't implement the plan exactly as we plan to do. And we may have to improvise and make changes from there. But our pledge to you is that our first concern is to make sure that we have the safety of our students as secure as we possibly can. And then from there, we would communicate. Anything you guys want to add on that? We are in a process right now as a district of switching over for next school year. We were approached, we being the Portage County superintendents, last spring, I think, at one of our monthly meetings in Ravenna, by Major Passimi on behalf of Sheriff Dove. And they came to us and asked us to consider switching over to an intruder response system that's known commonly throughout the nation as ALICE. You can see here, ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. And the components of ALICE are very different than the traditional lockdown in some ways. In some ways, they're a little similar. But we have been asked to switch over to that. Sheriff's Department had a concern about, it's a big county. As we acknowledged earlier, they've faced cuts just like schools and many others have. And so these things happen so quickly. When you hear these incidents that happen, most of them have happened in a matter of minutes. And there was a concern about, depending on where their people were, how quickly they could get somebody here to assist if we ever were to be in a crisis situation, not just for Waterloo, but anywhere in the county. And so they asked if we would consider this ALICE as our method of dealing with intruders. And so we did. They provided a training, I think it was at the beginning of last August, and we sent two of our staff members here to that training. And then the intention was for them to come back here and train our staff. So where we're at in that process is on February 17th, we had that waiver day. And part of our waiver day for our staff was an introduction to this ALICE method, just an overview of what ALICE is about, what it stands for, what it looks like. The second part of our plan, when our teachers come back in August before the school year starts, is to spend time detailed specific for what that would look like in Waterloo here, so that when our students return in the fall, we can put that into place and run drills with them and the assistance of the Sheriff's Department. So that's kind of where we're at. We have put the ALICE, if any of you looked at the district 5-year plan that we created last year under the safety section, this is one of the components of what we were doing, was switching over to this ALICE and to have it implemented in place by the start of the 12-13 school year. You guys want to come up and talk a little bit more? I'm going to let them talk about the ALICE in more detail.
Thank you. I think first of all, what we really want to stress is this is something that we've been working on for a while, even prior to the recent incident with the shark. Unfortunately, there have been enough incidents like Chardon across the country that has given law enforcement an opportunity to review those incidents whenever they occur and look at ways that we could possibly improve that situation. And we all know about lockdown. We all know that we've been doing it for years. Whenever an incident occurs, all the students are sent to their rooms. The doors are closed. You hide in the corner and you just sit there and wait. Now, what has been discovered through a lot of research on all the different incidents that have occurred is that it sets our children up really to become targets. And what has happened is they look primarily at the Virginia Tech issue, the incident that happened at Virginia Tech. And when they looked at and did research on a child who was the shooter, they found out that prior to the shootings, he would go to a local firing range and he would practice his shooting. And the way he practiced his shooting was to lay all of his targets down on the ground. And he would walk up and down the aisle shooting the targets on the ground as he was preparing, obviously, to do what he did at Virginia Tech. There was a SWAT officer in Dallas, Texas, who was married to a school principal. And they were discussing, just the whole issue of lockdown and how it really is placing our children at risk. And they needed to figure out a way to do it better. And so just in that conversation around the kitchen table, this program was established. It's new. It's actually becoming a national program. It's being recognized and accepted by all of the school resource officer associations across the country. And it's designed to put evacuation into the plan so that through, and I'm going to have Detective Burns talk a little bit more about the specifics, but it not only, you still do the original lockdown in some areas of the school, depending on where the intruder is, but then other areas of the school, we try to get the students out of the school. And just to give you an idea, just the most recent case in Chardon, we have been doing this training across the county, and we have an employee of NeoMed who lives in Chardon and has kids in the schools. When she received the Alice training at NeoMed, she went home and talked to her kids and explained to her kids, if something ever happens in your school, you don't want to hide in the corner, you don't want to hide under your desk, you want to get out of the school. This freshman, I believe she was, if I remember the email correctly, was sitting 2 tables away from the shooter at Chardon. And everyone suddenly started diving in front of the tables. And she stood up right away and screamed, "No, we can't hide on the tables. My mom said we have to get out of here." And she just headed for the doors and the kids followed her. And she probably saved several lives. So just in this short little example, this new concept works. So that's why, as we talked about it in the sheriff's office, before approaching the school districts, we felt there was something we needed to do for our kids here in the county. So that's kind of a quick history of how we felt it was important to approach the districts and move forward with it.
Thank you, Dennis. I started giving some thought to what we would do if we had to respond to an active shooter in a school some time ago. And I'm going to be very honest and frank with all of you and up front, I didn't have a very good feeling about that. In many respects, I still do not. I want you to understand, as you leave here this evening, we work with pretty limited resources right now. If you take a map of the county and you go from Broomfield and run across 76 and you go southeast, there is no law enforcement in this area except the sheriff's office. There are no villages, there are no cities. We are the main law enforcement responders in this area. That does not give me a warm, fuzzy feeling if something should occur at the schools here. I want to talk a little bit about response time because the reality of it is it's not good. If on a given day we try to put out 5 to 7 deputies on the road, that's on a good day. Currently, we have about 28 officers assigned to road patrol. If you do the math and you take that times 3 shifts, figure in comp time, vacation, sick leave, and what have you, the numbers are not good. In spite of that, we have filled that with some part-time folks. But here's the point that I'm trying to get at. If I had to leave my office, and unfortunately I'm tied down there a lot, and run out here lights and siren, how long do you think it's going to take me to get here? Hopefully we would have a patrol unit in the area that's closer than that, and our training right now has changed dramatically with these school situations. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of that for security issues, but we have trained the way that we handle these situations. The response time, again, is not good. And we're talking about minutes here. If you look and study any of these incidents, there's a huge body count in a very short period of time. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. And that's of concern to us. And when this ALICE program came along, majors, some of my staff and I sat down at the Detective Bureau and we thought to ourselves, you know, this could be very helpful. This could save some lives. And we took this out to the schools and offered it to them and asked them what they thought of it. We're not doing any arm twisting to get all of the schools involved. We wanted them to take a look at it, get some feedback, make their mind up what they wanted to do. I can tell you this from our perspective. It's much easier for us if we have to respond to something and know ahead of time what the plan is. If the school's in lockdown, we need to know that. If it's one of these schools that have the ALICE program in place, we need to know that as well. And what we are hopefully trying to accomplish is to get all the schools on the same page of music, so that if we have to make a response, we know what's going on. The other thing I would tell you, and again, I don't want to take up a whole lot of time here, but we will answer questions. Training is very important. Drills are important in this, and unfortunately, this thing in Chardon was a real wake-up call for a lot of local law enforcement around here, and probably a lot of parents. These things are unfortunate. They're very unpredictable. And it's always afterward you hear folks in the media saying all these red flags were there. Unfortunately, oftentimes we in law enforcement don't hear that. If you have something that's a concern to you as a parent, the best thing to do is call us, let us look at it. Far too often we're not getting information. They may be talking to classmates at school, that information may be out there and available, we just don't hear it. Sometimes the school officials don't hear it. That's an important element as well. That's probably one of the big preventative things that could be done. So with that, Dan, you want to talk a little bit about the program? We'll be around here to answer any questions you might have afterwards. I want to thank you for the opportunity to come out here tonight because this is a very important issue to our office.
Okay, I'm going to start off with, do you guys even know what, I mean, your kids have been going through lockdown drills for probably 10 years now. I mean, the parents, do you guys even know what they do for lockdown? Okay, basically what it was is, after Columbine, things started happening, and basically what our kids were being trained to do, I know across Ohio, I'm pretty sure probably across the nation too, is probably similar. If there was a problem at our school district, we was telling our teachers, if you had a lock on your door, lock your door, shut your light off, and hide your kids in a corner. So that's all we was doing for our kids. Me, myself, I had kids that were coming through school at that time, same age as like the Columbine type kids, and I was telling my kids, no, if you hear somebody shooting in your school, I don't care who tells you to hide in the corner, get out of the school, do what you need to do. So when this came about here, I mean, this is really, I really liked it because, I was already telling my own kids that. And basically, we've just came up with some things that, you know, giving the teachers some other ideals on what they can do. You know, they don't have to do, you know, we're going to talk about each one of these here, what they mean, but they don't have to do either one in any certain order. It just gives them another option, something that they can do. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with the alert. Like the superintendent said when he first started talking to you guys, you know, there's some things in their safety plan where they have like certain codes, you know, what every school is different. You know, code red means this, code green means that, or some teacher's name or something, it means something. You know, but for us, you know, we have a lot of different school districts, you know, 8 or 9 in the county that, you know, we might have to respond to. You know, we can't remember what code green means at Waterloo and code red at Field or whatever. So the part here of the alert that I really like, and I also think is better for your kids and for the schools, is if there's somebody in the high school gym shooting a gun, you know, why say some code somewhere, say, hey, there's an intruder in the high school gym shooting a gun. Everybody on this end of the building knows the high school gym's way down there. Let's get our kids out of here. Let's not hide in the corner until he can come down this end of the building. So just real words and saying, you know, kind of like we do on the radio when we say codes and stuff. You know, it's just so that everybody, it's plain language, you know exactly what's going on. Or even there's been people, you know, like, for example, if you're walking down the hall and, you know, you're an intruder in the building, maybe you're not shooting a gun, and you can hear somebody follow you on the loudspeaker, because, you know, most of our schools have cameras now. You know, now he's headed towards the junior high, he's wearing whatever, you know, clothes, you know, so that's going to start making that person who's in your school too think, you know, hey, what's going on? Somebody's following me around here. You know, he hears it over the speaker, plus everybody else in the building hears it. So that's the big part about the alert that I really like. The lockdown is still, you know, there could be times where you have to lock down. Say it's down by the high school gym, something's going on. You know, you can't get your kids out. Okay? A new part of doing that, though, too, is we're also teaching and giving the teachers options of barricading their rooms. You know, we've never talked about that before. You got a desk in there, you got whatever you need, you know, whatever you can find in your room to barricade the door. You know, just by locking your door doesn't mean that if somebody has a gun, they can shoot your lock and still get in your door. But if you make it harder for them to get in, or more time for us to get here, you know, because your door's barricaded, you know, maybe that's just another option for the teacher. The inform part, I guess I talked a little bit about, you know, letting everybody know, you know, exactly what's going on as much as possible that we can do, you know, or that your school can do. So that your teachers, there's a few teachers in here that probably went through the program already. I can just say that I've been involved with probably 400 to 500 teachers maybe now at classes where they've been, and there's, you know, maybe been a handful that kind of still don't agree with it. You know, there's, you know, but you know, I just try to tell them, hey, it's just an option for you. You don't have to do any of this. We're just trying to give you some other ways to, you know, make your kids safe. The counter is the part that maybe some of you parents want to know about. Along with lockdown, you know, barricade the door and everything, we're also teaching the teachers who, in return, you know, age-appropriate type stuff, will eventually probably be teaching your kids. Hey, if somebody comes in this room, you know, you're a 7th grade, 8th grade kid, whatever, you know, you're the linebacker on the team, somebody comes in this room with something, you know, we're going to throw something at them, you throw a chair at them, you do this, you know, you do whatever you need to do. Okay, instead of just letting our kids sit there in a corner and have somebody, you know, do some harm to them. At least, you know, and, you know, I don't know how to say this right, I guess just say it, you know, one kid might die because of that, but you get the other 19 kids out the window or whatever happens. Okay, so we're just trying to, that's just something else that's an option instead of just sitting there and doing nothing. So, and then, you know, we get questions, well, what about kindergarten kids, stuff, you know, that's just a hard question. What are you going to teach them to do? I mean, get them out if we can. You know, there's probably going to be no counter with kids that young. But, you know, as kids get older, you know, there are things that kids can do. And we teach, like I said, we were not going to go into everything that we try to teach the teachers, but I'm sure eventually, you know, it's your kids are gonna start learning some of the stuff that they know, and, you know, each school's doing different things too. There's one school that, we're involved with, you know, they're trying to put some extra, they're actually drilling holes in their new floor of their school, and they got these long concrete rods and putting eye bolts through their doors so they can jam them down in the floor if they have to. So there, you know, there's other, just anything, you know, your teachers might come up with. Every school is going to be a little bit different when it comes to that type stuff. And the evacuate, that's what, you know, I kind of said in the beginning, you know, if we have something going on at the other end of the school, you know, why are we keeping all of our kids locked up at this end of the school, hiding in a room somewhere? And then questions that we get from like teachers or even parents, well then, how do I know where my kid's going to be at? Well, we don't know either, but I'm not going to have to come to you and say, you know, little whoever is in this room and, you know, he's no longer with us. I'm going to be able to say, I don't know where he's at. He's probably out there in the woods with the rest of the kids. We'll eventually find him. So that part there too, I mean, that was kind of the feeling I had with my own kids. So that's kind of like the program that we talk about when we talk about Alice. It's just something different than just locking down. Like I say, it's nothing that your schools have to do or that teacher has to do in that incident. It just gives them options, gets them to start thinking about things that they can do in case something does happen. Like the sheriff said, you know, unless, you know, we just happen to be driving down the road and pulling in the parking lot, you know, even if we're 5 minutes away, by the time we get here, in 5 minutes, you know, what could happen? You know, and you add another 2 minutes for somebody to call us, and then a minute or 30 seconds for the dispatcher to call us, and, you know, we pull off the road right down where we're going, or in that case, we wouldn't do that, but, you know, we have to, you know, maybe 10 minutes by the time, even if we're 5 minutes away. So it's not going to be like we're going to be here when this happens probably. So, and I guess we will have more questions about this in the end. A lot of I'll answer this question now in case you guys want to know when your teachers, I'm sure the superintendent has dates and stuff on when they're going to be trained. Some of your staff has already been trained in this, and they'll be helping, you know, along with the sheriff's office, will be here helping them, you know, do the training and stuff also. As far as your kids go, you know, I don't know, I'm hoping that most of our school districts have the parents and kids all trained by next year. And I believe that I might be wrong about this, maybe correct me, but I think every school district that we are involved with in the county, except for one, who's on board with this way. So, all right.
So last thing that we wanted to touch base on, and Sheriff Doak kind of already mentioned it here tonight, is the importance of communicating either with the school or the sheriff department if there's things that you have concerns about. You know, obviously, bullying is a huge topic these days at the school. The state of Ohio just recently signed some new legislation with some new things school districts have to do in regards to bullying. They've clearly defined what bullying is. If you're aware of those kind of things going on, don't assume that the school is. Please call, let us know. Other things that you read, things that you hear, is especially parents, you probably see a lot of different things with your children's friends, others. You may hear things that you're not sure about. You may want to think maybe that's nothing, but maybe it is. You may read something that you shouldn't be. You don't want your student to know you did, but you read it anyways. If you come across things like that, let us know. There's a line. The courts have made a very clear line on what schools can and can't do when it comes to disciplining students for actions that take place outside of school or school-related activities. That being said, doesn't mean that we can't be an intermediary to help get a message to a parent who maybe has a student who's got some kind of a problem going on that you're aware of. And we can do that in a way that's non-threatening, where we don't even have to bring up your name. We just pass that information on to the parent as something that we've heard. But it really is critically important to make sure that you communicate with somebody if there's things that are happening that you're not comfortable with. Please let us know. A lot of this stuff, if we're proactive like that, we can put an end to before it ever becomes an issue. So, that being said, I think that's the formal presentation, but again, we're more than willing to stay here and answer any kind of questions pertaining to the school, the ALICE procedure, anything. So just open it up for questions, comments.
Okay. I addressed this problem probably about 8 years ago before we built these schools here. There was under administration, I brought it probably 3 times, I brought it to the board meeting. Unlocking the doors. So all the schools. Look around in Portage County, my son is a teacher in county. You cannot get in that school without all the kids. This door's been opened up here. High school door's been opened. And in your school system, we have a person called a first responder. And then the lady over there, told my wife, she is the first person that will see the intruder coming in that school. How she handles that position, or the telephone call she gets, or the irate parent because they suspended the kids, she is the first person in this school that they see, and how she handles it. I addressed it to Mr. Wolf, why those doors aren't locked. Different procedure. When this building was built, my son involved with all the schools and acting. And when they enter the door, when we enter that door there, you can go down to the cafeteria, down this hallway. She usually sees anybody from here. But to me, I was going to ask the chair's here. She was telling me the meeting they had last week on the day off, the kids didn't come in, that they wondered why the school doors were not locked. And they knew it was from the streets. Our system out there, the day this building was built, I don't ever use that handicap button, we have to call it a handicap. That thing has never worked. Where you push the button and the door will open up for a handicap person. I'm not going to do things. This thing was never built right. Where an intruder came in this building down the hallway. Last week, there was a person walking in the hallway. My wife went down there. This guy had no identification. He was a student teacher. I probably think it got back to Mr. Hill. And my wife asked him what he was here for. So we put him in this room. He was looking around. He told her that he was a substitute teacher. And she said, I have a badge on it. Where is yours? I don't believe it. I don't know why he even said that. The next day, some other girls, he was here for 2 or 3 days. Some girls was outside, they saw him. He went in and told the teacher about it. Time she got out there and checked the hallway, he was gone. It was I think that problem is limited. But different situations that happen here. The old school ran up really bad. Because we had teachers back then, they would find parents down in the classroom. They never came in the building and signed it off. Now the procedure, they come through that door, they have to sign it if she catches it. They can make a letter. There was a student in the morning, a bus driver caught the person out front. This person made a phone call to my wife, and here comes the principal. They caught him down. There was a breakup between the girl and boy. They caught him down in the cafeteria. It was just a situation like that. Now, what I like to ask these gentlemen here, the police, do you think our schools should be locked down all over Portage County?
So let me repeat that question. Do we think that the schools should be locked down here in Portage County?
I think that's not a bad idea to answer the question. That's the very short answer. Many of them that we go out to, and I went to one of the city schools the other day on another matter, and I couldn't get into the building until somebody actually came to the door. And when I went in there, of course, they asked me to sign in on having a problem with that. Many of the schools are using that type of system now. And anything that we can do in return, certainly, that helps. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, but I just don't understand, when I addressed this thing before the building, the board members on staff then, they said, well, who's going to pay, you like your wife take that responsibility for letting that person in the school? Or do we have a full-time person there watching everybody come in here, all the doors? When Mr. Hilton, he changed all the locks in his whole school system, he had a buzzer system put in, he did it the right way. But in the past, until something really happened in the school system, and the last time that people felt this way was a person up in Britfield was carrying a gun and went to school. And he got on the news and everybody showed up at the board office and wanted to know what he was going to do. It never changed. But I have some investment here. I have grandkids in the school system and a wife here. So I'm kind of concerned over the years. I think something's going to be taken. Some action is going to be taken.
Okay, so what are we doing about that? It's a legitimate concern. For what it's worth right now, for those that don't know, of all the doors that we have on campus, there are 2 doors that are open during the day. There's one door as you leave down this hallway, it's the furthest one to the left, as you come into the main office here for the elementary and the middle school. And then there's the similar door up by the main entrance to the high school. Those are left open for people to get in. We did have a conversation here recently. I don't remember if this was before last Monday or right after last Monday, but it's my understanding from our technology guys that we have a system in place where we could utilize a buzzer on those doors, and that there's cameras that are by the phones in the office area. So I've asked them to look into that to make sure that that system actually is working. Once we have that knowledge, then we will have to work on some of these logistical details like you talked about, because those are concerned. Who's responsible? How does that work? The last school that I was most recently at, Crestwood Middle School, installed a buzzer system right before I left, and we were working through all of those logistical details about how that works. So we are addressing that concern. Other?
I have a couple different questions. One of them is about interagency response. Sheriff, I'm sure you're aligned with like Riverfield and Kent, State Patrol, and the other agencies to respond with you to whatever schools are necessary to respond to calls, correct? 'Cause I know all those agencies have training and have the training for the new way we're attacking the school property.
You are correct. One of the things, so that you're aware, because of the sheriff's authority within counties, not just here, sheriffs have a lot of authorities in the counties. We don't have to sign mutual aid contracts. We have the authority, for example, to go into Kent, Ravenna, Garrettsville, and we don't, when they're flaunt this authority, let me put it that way. We want a cooperative effort with those folks. But in terms of what we're able to do, we have jurisdiction there. It's not a jurisdictional problem. On the other hand, some of the other agencies, if they want to respond with us, we need a mutual agreement in place to give them the authority to keep them out of liability if they respond when something happens. That's something that we're taking a look at. To answer your question, we work hand in hand very well with other agencies in the county. I think perhaps we're going to be taking a better look at this, though, in light of what happened up there. I'm sure it's going to be a topic at some of the chiefs' meetings. We're going to be discussing, how we're going to respond, who's going to do what. I can assure you when something like this happens, and what you don't see in the news coverage is the panic that takes place. And I know what my wife would do. I mean, she's married to a cop. And I try to instill in, my daughter and her, don't get in a panic when things happen. I can tell you for sure, if my daughter was at school and something happened, she's going to be there. She's going to go there. She's not going to listen to me. That's just the reality of it. That's human nature. And all of you who have children here, I'm sure feel that same way. There's this overwhelming anxiousness to find out that your kid is okay. One of the things that we need to do with some of this training is take a look at how we can do that in an organized fashion, so that it's not getting in the way of what we need to do if we're making a response. And that's the type of panic that occurs, and that's where all this chaos comes in these situations. You're trying to deal with the media, you're trying to deal with the situation, the crime scene, making sure the officers are okay, protecting the kids. And you know, if you have children missing, you're trying to make a head count, and there's so much chaos going on. Sometimes the parents have showed up, taking a kid away from the scene, and everybody's scratching their head going, you know, this child was in class, where are they at now? Those are the things we'd like to work through with some of this training. We do have a very good working relationship with the other agencies, but I'm sure we're going to be taking a harder look at some of these issues. Does that answer your question?
Yes, to a point. Yes, but I know there's, as far as responding, the state patrol can respond, resident calls, whatnot, if necessary.
You are correct. The State Patrol, so that all of you understand, they're basically the Ohio State Highway Patrol. Although they began taking on a different role in some of these situations because of the lack of funding statewide and the police officers having a layoff and all of these issues that have come up with funding, they are very good. We have a good working relationship with those folks in this county. And they're watching our back and we're watching theirs. And sometimes they're overstepping that jurisdictional authority line a little bit. And I don't have a problem with believing. There are institutions they have jurisdiction on. Recently we had an incident out at the Arsenal. The State Patrol has jurisdiction at the Arsenal, so does the FBI, and so do we. So there was multiple response out there, which was a good thing. And it worked out very well. But I think, again, we need to look at what we can do a little better in terms of training, coordinating things. I hope that answered your question.
And as you spoke to the staging area, that's something we need to look at. We need to have a separate staging area. I mean, I realize the stadium, but that's not, the stadium's not going to work for a place to stage your parents. You know, if you saw the chart incident, they had a facility away from the school where they sent all the parents to, and there was the board members there, there's representatives from the police agencies there for a place for the parents to go to. And I was thinking that day, you know, here we'd be stuck looking, whether it's Atwater, up in Atwater, where the old school was, but somewhere that, you know, because if not, I'm sure we're going to block off the entrances to the school if there's a shooting, so that way the person we can contain the crime scene. So you're going to block off the entrance over on Waterloo Road, you're going to block off the industry entrances, and so we need, as a school, we need to have an area to send this parents to, where they can go to and wait and get information, because we don't want them on Waterloo Road, and we don't want them on Industry Road, sitting in their cars waiting, blocking up and preventing the law enforcement agencies and emergency responders to get to the school when necessary. That's something that, as a school, we need to develop a staging area.
And again, when we make these plans and you go through some of these drills and stuff, you kind of have scenarios in mind that you train for. And that's not always the case, and let me point that out as well. When these things happen, it's very rapid. They're unfolding. We could be changing tactics. We could be dealing with a situation that we're kind of anticipating. This is the scenario, and then suddenly the circumstances change, and we've got to shift gears and do something else. And that has happened. And in the situation up there in Chardon, the typical situation is the shooter's going to commit suicide. That wasn't the case there. This kid ran out and took off down the street. And every situation is a little bit different, but I think the best we can do is just try to organize and plan and rehearse things and hope for the best. That's just my view on it. Yes?
I have a last question on the evacuation thing. You know, when you talked about, you know, the kids need to get out, yes, I agree in that. And you talked about, you know, so might be in the woods. are we trying though to set up a central evacuation place as the football stadium?
Oh,
That
absolutely.
you need?
Absolutely.
Okay.
The first thing we want to know as responders,
Hear that.
if the shooter is moving about inside of a building, not even necessarily a school building, but in the situation here, whoever's evacuated, we want a head count. We want to know who's there, who's missing. We want to know that these folks are in a place where we can set up a line and we can keep them out of harm's way and account for the people there. Okay?
To add
Yes.
on to that evacuation, what you guys were talking about, the stadium being really
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
For the evacuation, and you're saying that we're gonna have all the children evacuate to the stadium, what if a child does go out of the actual school and start heading towards that person, then what do you do?
You're talking about a situation, an isolated situation again, that I'm not sure that you can plan for. When these things happen, and I'm telling you, when gunfire erupts and that panic sets in and people do different things, they react differently to it. And unfortunately, those are the issues that we, all of us have to deal with when it occurs. We can put a plan in place and do the best we can and hope that procedure works, but I'm not going to stand here and tell you it's foolproof. Yes?
I just want to say a comment. I say if my kid gets out of here and run, I'd rather him run away than have a body tag on him. So I don't care if you count for him now. I can find him in the woods. I can find him at the neighbor's house. I can find him some.
Good point. Good point.
We have a question back here, and then we'll come up here.
Regarding the ALIS, if you guys teach our children the ALIS procedure, and the perpetrator is a student, they're going to know our plan. They're going to know exactly what we are going to do. Are the faculty here going to have a second plan? If it's a student who knows our original plan, is there
Well,
going to be a second
look at it like this
plan?
as well. First of all, if you just do a lockdown, they know that, do they not?
Right.
So we're not talking about something much different. I mean, a couple of these shooters that we have looked at in training, they were very well rehearsed. They knew everything. I mean, they knew what they were going to do. And I think that in some situations, this type of training with this Alice, it was just logic to me. Why are you going to leave people locked down in a room where an armed individual can go into that room and just open fire? You're talking about a body count.
Right, but what I was saying is that the student is going to know where our evacuation point is. And for an outsider that comes in, wouldn't. So that student's going to know where the entire school body is going.
No, that's not necessarily true.
Well,
How
so,
is that?
let me back up here
I
just a
mean, if our
second.
evacuation point is the stadium, and our kids know that, but I mean, isn't that like that
Can I
know where
talk about my
everybody's
illustration?
going?
Do you mind if I just
Am
make
I
a comment?
making that wrong?
No, I took the training at Neomed. and I
Go ahead.
I work at Neomed, and I was in the ALIS training, and let me tell you, it was intense training. It bothered me for weeks after I saw the online video, but I went home and I told my daughter exactly the same thing that I learned and the same thing that the sheriffs are telling us here tonight. Yes, anybody in this room, if you take the training, you're going to know about it. It's the same thing as the lockdown. So in the part where you're doing the evacuation and the countering, you've got people that are going to be countering against this intruder while the rest are evacuating. So even if the intruder does know the ALIS system, it's not going to happen in that order. So if that makes any sense, he may know how it works, but it's not going to work the way you're seeing it as ALICE, because you're going to do it in the order, the way you need to do it to evacuate the children, keep them safe, barricade the rooms, and then in the meantime, the sheriff's responding, people are helping, they're countering against the intruder, so it's all happening all at the same time. That's how we were taught, and that's how I understood it. I don't know if I'm correct in explaining it that way.
And just to add that to a little bit, some of these guys that are from law enforcement, maybe agree with me on this. You're correct. They are going to know, just like they know what our lockdown procedures are. They probably eventually knew what a code of orange meant or whatever. Sure, eventually the kids did learn that type of stuff. But, and the things about, even if you know that, even if I know that when I walk in that room, somebody's going to throw a book at me, somebody's going to hit me in the head with a chair or whatever, I might be getting ready for that. But if that's happening to me, I'm probably not going to be able to stand there with my gun pointing it right at you. I'm going to have to move. I'm going to have to do something like maybe somebody else gets away. Maybe I don't. I'm not saying, everybody this is going to save everybody. It's not going to. But it's better than just sitting there doing nothing. And so that type of thing, eventually, and again, you're correct, everybody is going to know, what's going on. I don't know, there's no way around that, though. I mean, we're going to teach all of our kids to try to be safer, so, and, it's probably going to be one of our kids, if it does happen, then, that's in our own school that does it. So they're going to know what our procedures are, but it's going to be chaos for them too now. It's not just going to be, I'm walking in, you're hiding under a table, and I'm walking by shooting you as I go. Things are going to be happening to you now. So that's the part of it that, maybe if that answers your question a little bit, that would help with that.
We had a question up here. Did you have
Well,
stuff?
I just wanted to say I commend you for doing this Alice training, because the school I work for, we went through it, and it is the best, hands down training. I went home and I found my kids in practice for my husband, God bless his heart, got books thrown at him and everything else. But we did it, they loved it, and my kids know exactly what to do here. Exactly what to do before they even go through the training here. And I think it's great, I think it's fabulous that we're implementing it, and I am just so proud that our school is doing this. Hands down.
Thank you. Back here.
So, okay, I get the whole evacuation, thing, we want to get our kids out, but my 9-year-old came home from school last Tuesday and said, my teacher told us if an intruder came in the building with a gun, she told us we are allowed to knock the windows out and run outside. So that kind of concerns me a little that, I get the whole evacuation, but is it going to be a lot more organized?
Would it concern you more if a gunman was in there and started opening the door?
No, absolutely. I want the kids to be evacuated, but I want to make sure it's not necessarily, is that how we're going to be doing it? Is knocking on the windows?
That's an option that's open. Let me point a couple things out. Part of this training is to still...
I get it, but if we don't have, it's a really far run from here to the football stadium. We don't have any Walmarts, we don't have any buildings around us to have our kids run in. We're going to be quite a deal from here to there. You know what I mean? And I know every situation is different, but at Chardon, the boy was outside with the gun. And then we're going to send kids. Is it going to be like an organized evacuation, or we're going to be going to the classroom doors, or?
Nothing is organized when somebody's in the school with a gun. Let me make that perfectly clear. And again, you have this panic element to deal with. And that's tough to get around. And part of the way that we get around this in our business, part of our training is repeated training. It kind of becomes muscle memory and you react to it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Again, I looked at what this program had to bring into the schools, particularly out in the outlying areas. I would love to stand here and tell you I'm going to put a school resource officer in here, because that is a big step. That is an excellent deterrent. It would, we would have somebody right here if something happened. Who brought up the fact that the person coming in might know? Is that you? Okay, so we put a resource officer in here. Who do you think the first target's going to be if somebody wants to come in here and shoot somebody? If they're thinking, it'll be a resource officer. And then that chain of events is going to take place. We can't plan for everything. We can't react to everything. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that we can. I'm telling you we need to take a look at things, see what we can do better, safer. what we can do as an agency to respond. And that's about the best we can do. Yes, sir.
From an administrative standpoint, is there a way to, I know you probably can't do it in advance, maybe after you guys had a practice or a drill, the parents could know, maybe to go home and talk to their kids or something? I never even knew they had done drills here, you know, it's not like the kids come running home and say what we do today. But is there a way to maybe we can talk to them or maybe answer any questions they may have that they can't talk about in school?
Yes, yeah, that's not a problem at all.
Come in, one thing. Just one thing to that, the evacuation thing, like to the stadium and all that, I know you guys don't have really know where it's going. I think, like a evacuation, if we could just say, okay, we're gonna evacuate the school right now, you can correct me if I'm wrong, all the schools are different, but I'm pretty sure we're all on the same page of this. When he's talking about that, I think that we say, we know for sure we're sending all of our kids to the football field right now because of the fire in here, there's a chemical spill, whatever's happening. But if there's something going on at that end of the building, and we're evacuating the kids down there, and the kids over here, or wherever, we're not gonna probably tell them to run around and go to the football field. I'm assuming we're gonna say, you go to the field, you know, go to, cross the street over here to the, where they do the stuff, the little business on the corner, you know, something like that is what I'm assuming is gonna be told to the kids as they're running out the door, something's going on, you know, not to run back around if there's a shooter in the building. Okay, so that's maybe that answers your question a little bit too.
And everything is so situation dependent. You know, if we have a shooter that's in the high school, we're not going to be instructing the 9-year-old to knock out windows to get out back here. You know, I mean, it's just going to be very dependent on what's happening real time, which is why being able to, we're in the process of making sure that there are numerous locations in this building where people can get on to see every camera and be able to get on to the all that goes throughout the entire campus here, to be able to do the informing of what's going on in real time, so we make sure that we're getting people where they need to be, because that can be changing within a second. So we had some other hands here.
What Chuck was saying, I would want my kids to just go right to the stadium. If they could get out and go somewhere else, and we could find them somewhere else, are they going to be in trouble for that?
Now, if we
could just like call and say, hey, we have our kids, or...
if we ever have a situation that goes on like that, the last thing we're going to be worried about is disciplining a kid because they found safety. That's okay.
I think every situation, we don't know what could happen. Every situation, whatever happens, we're going to have to react to that situation. What I'm concerned about at this time is not having the buzzer on the door. In the meantime, because there was somebody that got through there a couple weeks ago, or a couple days ago, whatever it was, would it be possible if in between the two doors out front here, if one door is open, that we could have someone at a little desk or standing there and just kind of monitoring who's ever coming in that door until we get a buzzer going? Being the office people weren't aware of the man coming down the hall the other day, did you get someone out there to watch that door?
Yeah, we'll have to look into that situation that happened the other day. I'm not aware of that. I assume you're talking the same situation that was talked about to begin with.
Down here was referred.
And I don't know the answer to your question on that. We will do what we can in our best ability to make this place safe. We also have other responsibilities that have to be going on too, and unfortunately, we don't just have people we can pull and put somewhere else because then something else isn't getting done. So we will see what we can do to make that happen.
Concern, monitoring that door.
Is there any way that you can get one of the informational videos or PowerPoints about Alice that linked up on the website or something for the parents to see? Like, I don't know if the street girl guy that came in here has a video, but I know the guy that came from Akron that did ours at Crestwood had a whole thing, and it had the video of the Columbine. It was a reenactment of and it was really I think that was really informative. I think that it might, be very helpful for the parents to see. Because even though the school has seen it and the teachers have seen it, none of the parents have seen it.
Okay, do you have any thoughts on that? I have not seen that, so I don't know.
I'm pretty sure. We can double check. We'll check.
Okay, we will look into that. We have another question over here. Yes.
What about metal detectors so that the weapon can't enter the school?
Can I talk about that in another report?
You have a cost factor there to start with. The ones which we use at the courthouse, but I don't want to tell you a raw dollar amount, hang on. You're looking at about $5,000 to $8,000. That's not a huge expense. Here's the issue. You have to have somebody there monitor that. So you're going to be, it's not just the device itself. You're going to have somebody monitor that. We're going to have a huge backup coming into the school on a daily basis. Some schools have gone to that. I'm not telling you it's not a good idea. I'm not against it. I'm just pointing out some of the pitfalls with it.
Are there schools in the county?
There's none that I know of in the county here that have them. Although, I'm going to go out on one here. We do have one that's using a wand, and there's been a recommendation to them to get one because of the students that they're dealing with and the incidents that we've had there. One day where a deputy had a knife thrown at him. And we have been on numerous calls there, and we're in the process of trying to deal with some of that. But they don't have the volume of kids there that we do here. The metal detectors, are they helpful? Yes. Does that answer your question?
I just think it might be worth the cost. We're not foolproof.
Yeah, there's a will, there's a way.
They were not foolproof, you're right.
You're right.
Was there other questions over here? I see another hand.
I'm going to address this to Mr. Bill and Sir Coates. What time is school started?
8 o'clock.
8 o'clock. Okay. What time was you in the building when that incident happened last week? Was that after 8? When you walked through? Okay, you're not here. This is tomorrow morning. School starts at 8 o'clock. All the kids are in their room. 8:15, we have a call into the school. We have a bomb being placed in your school, 2 different places. That first person that answered that phone, that secretary, she called, who is it? Did she call you or?
No, there's a detailed procedure that gets followed. There's a whole checklist.
Under that scenario, other than a gun shooter, do we evacuate the school similar to what happened earlier? If that was on the dressing room wall, there's a bomb in this school, how do we address that? And evidently, when that happened, you didn't think it was necessary to evacuate the kids.
No, it didn't.
I mean, what part, can you tell us what part of the school was that happened?
It was in a restroom.
In high school or down here?
High school.
That's, yeah, it did happen. I know it's Friday. I mean, that's going on 20, but just that one time. Would we evacuate at that time?
So the question
There was
is,
a bomb scare called in at 8:15, and there was 2 bombs in your school in different locations.
yeah, we would do what we would need.
Now, going back to that central place where the kids would go, is that addressed under the Allen's procedure? Or we haven't got into that.
We have a procedure in place if there was to be a bomb threat. Just to clarify here, because I'm a little confused with the question, there was not a bomb threat last week. It was not, what was written was not that there's a bomb anywhere on the campus.
Okay, let's say tomorrow morning it would be.
we would follow our procedures, we would get the students to safety as quickly as we could. And we would be working in conjunction with these gentlemen to determine what the best course of action is as quickly as possible. If we had bomb threat, we would get students out of the building as quickly as we could, period. But, you know, everything is different. When we go back to that situation last week, like we talked about at the beginning, that while there was a threat, was one that they were quickly able to isolate the 4 kids that were responsible. And so while that was, if we wouldn't have been able to do that, if our video surveillance cameras wouldn't have been able to tell us who was responsible for that, I'm certain that it would have been handled differently than it was. But we were able to utilize those cameras, and they really came in helpful for us.
Touch some base on the whole bullying situation. Now, we do have a child, by chance, that ever does start to bully, and we notify you guys. What procedures do you go about that? Because sometimes the bullying continues even after you actually talk to them.
I can speak to that. I don't know if one of the principals wants to address that, being the ones dealing with it daily. If not, I can speak to that myself. But
There's a bullying policy in place that's been on the website as well. And essentially what we have to do is we have to conduct an investigation on something presented to us. Either a verbal or a written request. And that can be through a parent or a student at that time, or another student. It doesn't matter. Whoever gives it to the committee, we take that information and go to them, conduct an investigation. At that point, whatever we find evidence that the bullying is occurring, we need to take the appropriate course of action.
What happens if that bullying continues after we take that action?
If we are made aware of it, then we will continue to follow the bullying procedure, continue to get them comfortable, or take the appropriate measures to remove the student from the position. Oftentimes, what I find is a lot of bullying situations that I'm kind of looking at on an individual basis and trying to make everybody aware that there's a policy in place that we're following, that the students know what kind of rules and guidelines that we're following, and trying to communicate that to as well.
Then what do we do if it continues to, I guess, the interaction then starts coming out from the school?
If it is outside of school,
Okay. But you already made, you guys notified us.
I guess it depends, like, if it's a Facebook issue, and oftentimes it starts on Facebook before it comes here. It starts on Twitter or text. As Dr. Hill referred earlier, there's kind of a separation of where we need to get involved and what the consequences we can all. We would take it to the local authority. We can be the conduit of communication between you and the other parents to bridge that gap between them. But we would encourage you to approach the local authority for assistance on that.
yeah, I think from a school perspective on the bullying, you make a report. We follow the procedures that Mr. Montgomery just talked about. You know, personally, having been a principal of a middle school, of a high school, of an elementary school, one of the frustrating things for me always was, you know, we look into things, we try to get to the bottom of them the best that we possibly can. We notify the parents of the students that are involved. If we can prove something, we take discipline action. If not, we tell teachers, we keep an eye on things. What I would encourage, though, is that if you're the parent of somebody that's in a situation like that and you've called and you've gotten feedback on what the school's done and what we're doing, but it continues to happen, please let us know. Because even when we do all of those things, we can't be everywhere, hear everything, and see everything. And there's nothing more frustrating for us than to get a call when you're at absolute wit's end and think nothing has been done for 3 months, and here we are thinking 3 months ago we addressed it, and we haven't been made aware of anything else, nor have we seen or heard anything. And then there's been all this stuff that's going on. And so, you know, please, communication is really important on that. Question?
Well, I have a comment. The biggest thing that I think that's happening is lack of awareness.
Parents aren't paying attention to what's going on with their kids on Facebook, texting, because it's all done in secret. So many things are done in secret, we're not paying attention to. I spoke to a child that goes to the high school in Waterloo, okay? And they told me, I said, why don't you guys ever tell if this person saw this on Facebook? Okay, I'm gonna take this gun to school, I'm gonna do it. They see that, but they don't tell anybody. And I go, why don't you tell? Why don't you tell? And his response was, we see it all the time. I hate you, I'm gonna go to school the next day and I'm gonna kill you. They never followed through with it. This was just an anomaly that happened in Charlotte. Is there any way that we can start having like once a month, assembly at school to tell about don't be afraid to tell, or here we have an anonymous box where you can turn something in, so that if you tell them, you're gonna be bullied for telling this, I don't tell, but we're not telling because they think it's no big deal. When, to make them aware of, it doesn't matter when, if somebody's saying that, there's the opposite problem.
Sure.
There's not enough awareness for the kids to realize and to see when there is a problem, just well, blowing it off.
And the answer to the question is yes. We can and are looking into some different things that we can do.
Because how do you think that person feels? That's what I tried to tell them. How do you think the person feels who saw what he wrote but didn't say anything? Didn't tell somebody.
I just want to make a comment, and that's a very valid point that you bring up. I'm glad you brought it up, and we wish there were more of that happening. Unfortunately, you're concerned. There are other parents who are not concerned, and oftentimes that's where the issue lies. I do think that we need an educational component regarding that. What we see in this business, though, is oftentimes there are children out there running about with all sorts of social media access, and the parents just aren't involved. And that therein lies some of the problem. I just want you to be aware of that.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Other questions? Comments, concerns? Okay, well, we appreciate your time here tonight. We'll stick around for a few minutes afterwards if there's any individual questions you have. Please feel free, we said, to contact us with any future concerns in light of all of this. And we will communicate with you as we continue to implement all of this, Alice, different steps. And taking notes here on the comments and suggestions that were made tonight, and we will see what we can do to follow up on those two. So again, thank you for your time. Have a great evening. Is there a question back there?
No, I would like to say thank you. For those of us who have high school kids and we were in school, didn't have anything, didn't have this story. And I honestly didn't know what a lockdown drill was. We didn't experience it. But it shows a lot of concern for the school district and maybe the superintendent to call all of us in here with the option to listen to it. I am